Hello everybody and welcome to another video about Dwarf Fortress. This is a video that some people have been asking me to make for some time now. It's kind of a list that I wish that I really knew before I started playing Dwarf Fortress. Just a couple things that kind of bothered me or surprised me once I realized them. Some of these may be a little bit more in-depth mechanical things, and some might just be something that isn't totally expected once you initially encounter it. So I'm going to kind of go through this list and hopefully you'll learn a few things about Dwarf Fortress. And also, before we hit the end of this video, I just wanted to say, if you enjoy this kind of video, slap a like on it. And down beneath this video, I would love to know what your thing you wish that you knew before you started playing Dwarf Fortress. Or once you started getting deeper into the game, even. What is a concept that the game asks the player to encounter that you think everybody else should know? I'd love to hear it, and I'll see you in the responses. But for now, let's dive into my list, starting off with location. The world map is something that's very easy to completely misunderstand the first time you're looking at it. There's a lot of different colors and icons and locations that are scattered throughout that can make things quite confusing for a new player. When working out exactly where the best place to settle is, one of the first things that I wish that I knew was how to select a civilization. It was something that definitely tripped me up in the first few fortresses that I played back when I was learning the game. Admittedly, the UX looked quite a bit different back then, but the concept was still the same. Choosing the origin civilization is quite simple. Simply click on the Origin Civilization button, and this gives you a list of dwarves. The blue highlighted zones is exactly where this particular faction is. Upon scrolling through the list, it's always a good idea to find one with a decent size number of population as well as a decent number of sites. If they have very low population or very low sites, it may be difficult to get migrants pretty quickly. The next thing is embark location. When scrolling around on the map, it is very easy to kind of become overwhelmed from all of the different options between the different materials, whether or not it has sand, an aquifer, gold, silver, flux, or etc., or any other types of metals. Of course, the biome and surrounding wilds was always a confusion early on too. What really is the difference between terrifying, untamed wilds, calm, and wilderness? Well, let's unpack that a little bit. There are 3 different difficulty levels of the map. There are calm, wilderness, and untamed wilds. This goes for every type of biome. Whereas good biomes, good aligned biomes, will have serene, mirthful, and joyous wilds. Evil biomes will have sinister, haunted, and terrifying. These different biome levels are kind of like your difficulty slider. All the way up to the hardest level, untamed wilds or terrifying or joyous wilds, random things will attack you and the animals tend to be bigger. They'll attack you when you're damaging the surface or chopping down trees, or even constructing on the surface. And this can really cause some pain for a starting out player. In older versions, there was just simply bigger, scarier, more aggro animals walking through, not necessarily out of their way to attack you, but definitely dangerous enough that you had to be wary about their existence. The last thing that I kind of wanted to mention before I move on to the next portion of this video is on the world map, there are different sites. Certain neighboring sites are particularly egregious, especially if you start seeing the ominous tower. If you see towers, maybe don't settle there unless you want to be attacked by potentially massive forces in the first year. That's where the massive dark-colored armies of necromancer experiments and zombies come from. So be a little bit wary about those, and maybe don't settle on their doorstep. Unless you like pain, because whip me Armok Daddy. The next part of this video is civilian uniforms. Have you ever noticed that you have a dwarf running back and forth, picking up something and dropping it, and then going somewhere else, picking up something and dropping it, and then going somewhere else and picking up something and dropping it? It's probably because they've been assigned to both woodcutting and mining at the same time. Now, the problem with assigning them to woodcutting and mining, or alternatively also hunting, is they require a civilian uniform. This is a specific number of items that the dwarves must wield at all times in order to be able to do that job. So if they decide they need to do a different job, they will go and drop the item for that one job and then go pick up the item for a different job. So essentially, if you have a dwarf that is assigned to hunting, mining, and woodcutting, and you have a couple mining jobs and there's animals on the map that could be hunted, as well as some trees marked to be chopped down somewhere on the map, the dwarf will run to one stockpile, pick up a crossbow and some bolts and a quiver, try and go hunting for a couple of minutes, and then drop that on the ground, and then go grab a pickaxe, and then go over and try and start mining for a little bit, and then drop the pickaxe before they actually get to the mining location, run over, grab an axe, and then run to the wood chopping station. It's kind of a little bit of chaos, and frankly, maybe a little bit poorly explained in the current version, and in older versions, it wasn't even mentioned, and it was even harder to notice. So a lot of people would end up with this problem of dwarves running in perpetual circles without even realizing it. Work, please work, please work, please work, please work. Ooh! Now this next one is a little bit high-level concept, but this is thoughts and interactions. There are many different thoughts that dwarves can get from different events and different things, and a lot of these really impact dwarves' moods. Now, dwarves don't necessarily need to be doing tasks to be acquiring positive thoughts. There are lots of different things that can help them acquire these positive thoughts without actually doing anything major. As an example, I see a lot of players pushing back against the justice system in the game because, oh no, all of my dwarves are going to get arrested. But here's the thing, when a dwarf tantrums, let's say they're particularly upset, they tantrum and they commit a crime. If that crime is punished, a large portion of the fortress that values the law will get a happy thought due to that dwarf being punished. Any of the family members or large numbers of the family members of a dwarf whose family member was injured by another dwarf committing a crime, those dwarves also get especially happy thoughts that a family member was justified in the conviction of a criminal. When you complete a noble's demand in your noble's screen, when they have a little red thing, the noble gets a happy thought, as well as portions of the fortress. If a dwarf has a soapy bath with a bar of soap at a well, they get a particularly happy thought. They get a less happy thought if they use a river, as an example. Another set of things is if dwarves have downtime, which is something that's very necessary in Dwarf Fortress. Older versions of the game actually had an idle dwarf counter, which caused some massive brain rot amongst the community because it showed the player exactly how many dwarves, air quotes, weren't doing a task. Well, turns out dwarves are very similar to us humans in that we need a lunch break. We need the opportunity to go and socialize with our friends. And so dwarves that have the ability to go to temples, dwarves that have the ability to go to guild halls, and dwarves that have the ability to go sit down in dining rooms all get separate happy thoughts for all of these events. Dining rooms give a specific thought. Sleeping in a high-quality bedroom gives us a specific happy thought. Acquiring a new item or a piece of clothing also gives us a specific happy thought. And the idea of keeping your dwarves happy is as simple as stack as many of these on top of each other as possible. So a dwarf can get a specific thought from praying in a temple to a god that they adore, and then after that, go to a craftsdwarf's guild and get taught a lesson on crafting some sort of item. And then after that, go to the weaver's guild and get a lesson on stitching. Followed that, they would then head down to the tavern, grab themselves a beverage, and then run off and make some tables at the stonecutter's shop because that's what the noble demanded this morning. All of these give happy thoughts for different reasons, and this is how you keep a balanced fortress. I think a lot of people try to overfocus their fortresses and miss out on all of the lovely little interactions that you can get by having priests assigned to a specific dedicated temple. And also, when it comes to guild halls and temples, you don't even need the dwarves to demand them. You can just make them, and then have them ready for when the dwarves demand them. And it's much easier to manage your fortress that way. Kind of anticipate what kind of guild halls they're going to request by looking to see which jobs are building up. If you have more than 10 dwarves in a specific job profession, they will ask for a guild hall for that profession. So maybe if you have 9 metalsmiths, it's time to make a metalsmiths hall, even if they haven't requested it yet. Now, the next one is a little bit random. This is the 4th one on my list. This is goblets. Goblets and mugs and cups. Whenever you make one, it makes 3 goblets instead of 1, which I don't fully understand. I've never fully understood this. I know when making blocks out of a boulder, you get 4 from 1, but with goblets, you get 3. I just wanted to say that. It confuses me. But if you realize suddenly that there's just goblets everywhere, maybe it's because you have 200 dwarves and you set a job for 200 goblets. In reality, you made a significantly larger number than that, so you might want to sell some of those. The 5th thing on my list here is owned clothing. Dwarves, when they pick up an item or clothing or craft that they really want, they will own that item. If you want them to have the highest chance of owning an item, they need to carry it. If dwarves are carrying clothing from one place to a stockpile, they have a chance to own it. So the more stockpiles you can get them to take the clothing to, the more odds they will have of deciding, I really like this dress. I want to wear it. And then the dwarves will drop their old clothing on the ground, generally, put on the new clothing, and then be on their merry way. Unless they have a cabinet in their bedroom. So if they own a bedroom, and at the point of them acquiring the new clothing, they decide they want to put on the old clothing, a clean dwarf will take their old clothing, run to the bedroom, and put it in their cabinet. However, certain dwarves just have a messy trait where they will just leave stuff strewn about without a care, and feel free to just throw those into the trash bin. Sometimes it can be difficult to select who to put in your military, which is why the sixth thing on my list here is mastering a skill as a military dwarf. One of my favorite ways to figure out how to put dwarves in the military, or more specifically, who to put into the military, is will they just enjoy the act of training? Some dwarves, especially dwarves that want to master an art, or dream of mastering a skill, or want to raise a family, may not be the most happy about being in the military, unless they have that specific thought of they respect martial prowess, or are brave in the face of imminent danger. When looking for dwarves to put in the military, my go-to is just look for somebody who dreams of mastering a skill. Because even if they don't enjoy the process of fighting in combat, because no dwarves do, unless they're like that really rare type that are abjectly cruel and to those unfortunate enough to be subject to their sadism, which is the very specific trait, which is like, okay, you should go into the military. But otherwise, just look for dwarves that dream of mastering a skill. Because frankly, those are generally dwarves that will at the very least enjoy the process of learning in the military, and by the time they have to go fight, they will be so happy about just mastering all of these different skills that they get to do all the time in the military training, they'll more or less get over it quicker than a normal dwarf would. So since we now have Mark's dwarves that work again, my seventh thing on this list is overhangs. So Mark's dwarves have this annoying little habit of yeeting themselves off of walls to go fight with things, or like jumping through fortifications to go fight with things. Okay, well then he goes and does the dwarf thing. Well, good for you. Or jumping over walls to go fight with things. So when you're building a space for your Mark's dwarves, what I recommend is building a fortification wall that they can shoot through. They can also shoot through grates on the ground, but I don't generally set those up. And then have at least one tile overhang, or at least one tile up, so they can't climb out and down. If they can climb out and down, as soon as they run out of ammunition, they will try and use their crossbows as clubs to beat the crap out of the enemy. However, if it is easier for them to pass to an ammunition hold or a stockpile full of ammo, then they will do that instead. So what I would recommend is set up a little patrol route between your ammunition and the spot where you want them to shoot from, and just kind of get them to do laps. And they will be very efficient about running back and forth, grabbing as many items as possible, and then shooting down at the enemy until they run out of ammo. And then at that point, they'll just take the long way around to go bonk them instead of jumping straight into the middle of the fray, which is probably fine, because by the time they finally get there, the fighting will probably be over. Now, the eighth and final thing on my list is, so have you ever seen those kids that have no face? Don't be worried. That child is okay. So this is a very, very old bug that's in the game. It's been around as long as I've been playing. However, when a dwarf's description is just purely text on a wall and has no actual visual aesthetic, it's not so obvious. There's a chance that dwarves that come in from the edge of the map can be born without skin pigments, which simply means that they have no skin tone. In the older versions of the game, it simply meant that there was one line of text missing when you go to read the color of their skin. Instead of having a color of the skin, it would just be blank. Most players would just read over this and not even think about it. However, when the tags of the visual aesthetic of a dwarf is tied directly to their skin tone, and that's where the game pulls the sprite for their face, let's just say there's a problem with this, because then suddenly the game doesn't know what color to pull for their face. So you just get dwarf with no face. I assure you that child is okay. They are a perfectly normal dwarf, and don't ask me why they're 0 years old, because alongside of this bug, these dwarves, they don't age. So that's just don't worry. The kid's okay. They'll be able to haul stuff for you. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. It'll just a perfectly normal dwarf with no skin. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you would like to see more Dwarf Fortress stuff, check out this YouTube channel. I've got more Dwarf Fortress than you could reasonably watch in a lifetime. If you want to watch my VODs, the stuff that I do on my Twitch streams, the best place to do that is on my Extras channel. There's also a link to that in the description. It's Blind Extras. Blind Extras, it's where I put archives of my streams, so you can get between 7 to 10 hour VODs of Dwarf Fortress almost every day of the week. Thank you very much for watching this video, and hope to see you in the next one.